Hi players, bonjour from Paris. My name is Asaf and welcome to my channel Easy Board Games. Today I'm going to show you how to play the advanced rules of Company of Heroes, the board game. As always, if you learned something new or if you saw something that you like, please consider subscribing to my channel, like and comment on the video. Let me know how did you find this explanation, and also if there is another game that you would like to see on this channel. One small thing before we're getting started, I took this explanation directly from the rulebook that was provided with the game itself. So I highly encourage you to check out the website of the company, no pun intended, in order to check for any kind of errata or updates. Ready to up your game of Company of Heroes? Let's get to it. The first advanced rule in the maneuver phase is concerning the weapon team's units. So when we look on these three units that we have, the mortar team, the anti-tank gun, and the machine gun teams, they all have this no fire icon on them. And that means that when we're going to spawn any of them, they're going to be spawned also with the no fire die that we can see right over here. This no fire die means that right now they're packed and they cannot fire. So let's continue our example with this MG42 team right over here. Every time that we would like to deploy this team, and that means that it will be able to fire, we need to spend one command point. So just for the example, let's say that this MG42 team would like to come to this hexagon and deploy itself. It will spend one command point, second command point, and then with a third command point, we can do something like this. So we're going to flip the dice on the other side to the V side, and that means that we use the third command point for this unit, and now it is ready to fire. Of course, also, they will need to choose their direction, but we will talk about it a little bit more when we'll talk about the firing arc. Also, in order for this unit to move on a different maneuver phase, they will need to pay another command point in order to pack again their gear and then continue with the movement. So let's say, for the example, that this MG42 team would like to come over here. One command point will be spent in order for them to pack their gear, right like this, and then spend two more command points in order to move over here. The second advanced movement is concerning the heavy vehicles. So just as a reminder, a heavy vehicle is a vehicle with this red heart icon on their card. So let's, for example, take the Sherman tank that we have right over here. So let's say that we want to move this Sherman over here. We're going to spend one command point, and we're going to do one of the following. Either backwards or forward, and then move one hex tick. And that means that, for example, this is right now our direction, just like this. So the tank will move one hexagon forward and then one tick to the right. Of course, we can also first move one tick and then move the tank, or we can just move without rotating. That means moving backwards or forwards without rotating the tank, or we can just rotate the tank without moving it at all. So let's say, for example, that I would like to move the Sherman over to this hexagon facing the bridge. I will do the following. First command point will be just to move it one tick right over here. Second command point will be to move one tick and then move one forward. And then third command point will be again to move one hexagon forward and then move one tick hex over here to this direction. Some heavy vehicles will have the slow icon next to them, just like we have with the Wehrmacht army, and we have here a unit that is called Sturmpanzer Brummbär. So when we're going to spawn one of these tanks, we're going to have the slow icon right next to it. And that means that this tank cannot rotate for free as we saw it with the Sherman. And that means that with one command point, this tank will be able to move backwards or forwards, but it will need to spend another command point in order to rotate one of those hex sticks. Some units will have a double slow icon, and that means that they can spend only one command point each maneuver phase. The last advanced rule that we have in the maneuver phase is the retreat. Retreat means that infantry, green units, may retreat at any time during the maneuver phase regardless of how many command points they already spent. So let's start with a simple example. Over here, we're going to have a rifleman unit of the United States. They already spend 3 command points. Right next to them, we're going to have an MG42 unit of the Wehrmacht that, with the last command point, decided to deploy their unit facing this direction. Again, we haven't talked about the firing arcs, but we'll get to it quite soon. So in the damage phase, basically this unit will have to be pinned. So the retreat advanced rule says that at any point in the maneuver phase, let's say that we haven't finished the maneuver phase yet, this unit will be able to do something that is called retreat, and that means taking this dice right over here and put it on the tray, and then move 3 hexagons, even if it already spent 3 command points. Now, the direction of the retreat will be to the nearest retreat point. In this map, Trois Ponts, for the United States, it's right over here. So this unit will go in the shortest and most direct way from this hexagon all the way to this one. In this case, it will be 1, 2, and 3. And in the following maneuver phases, this unit will continue moving each time 3 hexagons until it will reach the retreat point or to an hexagon adjacent to it if the retreat point is already occupied. This retreat status will be lifted off in the next supply phase. Let's say in another example that we would have had this mortar team unit that was already deployed, and now at the end of the maneuver phase it will be pinned because we have here the MG42 team. If we will decide to retreat with the mortar team, it is possible, and retreat means that the unit is automatically packed and ready to go. So when we will decide to retreat, immediately we're going to move again 1, 2, 3 hexagons. It's important to remember that we always need to take the shortest and most direct way from where we are right now to our retreat point. Sometimes we're going to have more than one retreat point on the map. In this map, the Trois Ponts, it is not the case because we're going to have only one retreat point for one army and another retreat point for another one. But if we have another option, for example, if we're playing with a major unit of the US, then it is possible that we're going to have another retreat point. In this case, we're going to again go to the closest one, the shortest and the most direct route. But if it's exactly the same distance, then the player who is retreating is able to choose to which point it would like to retreat. In the damage phase, we're going to have something a little bit different with the high explosives. So let's say we have a US major that is spotting the MG42 unit to the mortar unit that we have of the US right over here. As we can see, this unit is deployed, the major has one site more, and the MG42 unit is not deployed. When we're going to apply damage, we're going to have this mortar team apply 1 high explosive damage to the MG42 unit. Now with the basic rules, that would have meant that we have 1 damage to the MG42 unit for sure, 100%, because when we're looking at the defense matrix, we see that infantry does not have protection from high explosives. Here we're going to have something a little bit different. We're going to have the attacker roll this damage die, and then we're going to have a couple of possibilities. If we're having one of the red signs, it means that the attacker missed completely and the unit that was targeted has not been damaged. If the attacker rolled one of the black symbols, then the targeted unit has taken 1 damage. And if the attacker has rolled one of the green symbols, then it's going to be a critical hit and the targeted unit has suffered 2 damage. So just to resolve it right over here, the attacker, which means the US, is going to roll this die. And as we can see, we have a black symbol right over here. And that means that the targeted unit is going to take 1 damage. We already saw in the basic rules the heavy cover, which was the buildings. And every time we would have had a unit inside one of those buildings, we added 2 defense dice to the unit that is inside the building. Here we're going to have a light cover, which are this yellow lines that we can see right over here. And that means that a unit that is situated inside one of those shelters will receive one defense die, but only from the direction that is being shot at. So we can see over here, for example, we have the mortar unit of the US that is going to receive this protection die if it's being fired upon from one of these sides. So here, over here, and basically all of this firing arc that we're going to talk about just in a few more minutes. So right now, in this situation, if we're going to resolve the damage phase, this unit is going to receive the defense die. But on the other hand, if this unit is right over here, for example, then it will not receive this protection die because over here we don't have this light cover. So obviously, as you can already guess it, right over here we're going to have a hexagon that is completely covered with these yellow lines, and that means that a unit that is situated right over here will receive one of these protection dice. Doesn't matter from which direction is going to be fired upon. And if we're already talking about protection, then another rule that we're going to have over here is that every building will have 4 hit points before it will be destroyed. So in the basic rules, we remember that buildings were indestructible. But right over here, we know that each building will have 4 hit points. Now, when we're looking at the defense matrix, we can see that buildings are completely immune to anti-infantry and armor-piercing damage, but are completely vulnerable towards high explosives and fire damage. So every time a building will receive damage, and yes, it is possible to shoot upon a building even if there is no unit of the enemy faction inside of it, we're going to take 1 pip and we're going to reduce it. So let's take this building, for example. If we had some units inside the building when it was destroyed, so let's say that it was already on 1, and then the Wehrmacht created 1 more damage to it, this building will be destroyed. All the units inside of it also will be destroyed, and this building is going to be taken out and will be replaced with one of the other miniatures of a destroyed building. So now we cannot access inside these ruins of this building. It is basically out of the game, but it is still going to continue to block the line of sight for the different units. Let's talk now about the firing arcs. So we're going to have 3 units that are going to be affected from it. The first one are heavy vehicles, the second one is anti-tank teams, and the third one is MG42 units. Now, it is true that the Sherman right over here has a gun that can spin 360 degrees, but it is still relevant because he has a fixed gun that is located at the front of the tank, so we'll talk about it also. So let's start with the MG42 unit that we have over here with the Wehrmacht. When this unit is going to be deployed, so let's say that it's going to move 1 hexagon over here, and with another command point it will want to deploy, it will need to choose to which direction they would like to deploy in order to create the firing arc. So we can see, just for a moment here, that this is basically a little bit like a pyramid, right? So we have the base, and then it gets a little bit smaller, and then a little bit smaller, a little bit like an arrow, we can say. So this direction of the arrow is the direction that is going to signify for us where we have the firing arc. So right over here, let's say that they decided to stay like this. The firing arc is these 3 hexagons that we have over here, and then it's going to be stretched 1 more hexagon, because I remind you that the basic range of the MG42 is 2. So we're going to have 1, 2, and then basically it's going to be stretched just like this until this hexagon. So from this hexagon all the way over here, and that is the firing arc. So basically it means that if we're going to have a unit that is located right over here, the MG42 unit will not be able to target the US major unit because it is outside of the firing arc of the MG42. So with the Sherman, for example, we can see that we have 2 things. First of all, we're going to have this sign that shows that the turret can spin 360 degrees, and basically it means that we're going to be able to create a 2 armor-piercing damage in any direction that we would like. Next to it, we see that we have an anti-infantry damage, but only in the frontal firing arc of the tank. So that means, for example, that if we're having this grenadier unit right over here, and we have the Sherman tank that is right now towards this area right over here, in the damage phase, this Sherman tank will be able to do 2 armor-piercing damage to the grenadier unit right over here, but will not be able to do the anti-infantry damage since it is not in the forward firing arc of the tank. So that means, of course, that if we would have had this situation right over here, the Sherman would be able to target this grenadier unit with the 2 armor-piercing damage, and to target this unit with the anti-infantry damage because it is right in front of it. Pay attention that only heavy vehicles will be able to profit from targeting 2 units at the same time. Now, if we're already talking about the firing arc, let's talk about the defense dice that heavy vehicles will receive when they're being attacked from the front. So let's say again that we have here the Wehrmacht tank and we have here an anti-gun team of the US. Now we already know that they are situated in their firing arc. We also know that this team is going to do 2 armor-piercing damage to this tank right over here. But because the armor of the heavy vehicles is stronger in the front than in the sides or in the rear, for every armor-piercing damage that it has received from the front, it will be able to roll the dice as a defense roll. This is why when we look at the defense matrix, we see that we have this gray shield with a small asterisk next to it. If, on the other hand, this anti-tank gun would have been in this hexagon, for example, so right now we can see that it's not in the front arc of the tank, and that means that the damage will be created from the side. In this case, this tank will not be able to roll the defense die, and it will take 2 damage, as we can see right over here. So let's look at the first example. Right over here we have a major US unit, and here we're going to have an MG42 unit that spent already 2 command points in order to come here, and another one to deploy itself. Now, when it deployed itself, this unit chose this direction, so the firing arc will be right over here and covering this area. So this major unit was already inside the firing arc when this unit has just deployed. And that means that this unit right now, it is not pinned. This unit will only be pinned if it's going to stay here during the damage phase. If in the same situation, for some reason, don't know why it happened, this rifleman unit of the US decided to voluntarily go inside by spending 1 command point the firing arc of the MG42, now this unit will be considered as pinned. Again, I will repeat myself, this unit will be pinned because this unit decided to voluntarily go inside the firing arc of the already deployed MG42 team. So just as a reminder, it is true that this unit cannot move because right now it is pinned, but I remind you that it will be able to do the retreat action. Another advanced rule that we have is the smoke. Usually it's going to be a pay-per-use type of action by one of the commanders or something like that. And we're going to have the following. So let's say that we have the rifleman unit right over here, and they decided to smoke this hexagon. So first of all, this smoke is going to disrupt 2 things. First of all, the line of sight, and that means that units will not be able to see through this smoke. And also it's going to disrupt a pinned situation. And that means that if we would have had this situation and this unit right now is pinned, and then another tank, commander, or whatever decided to smoke this hexagon that we have right over here, this pinned situation is going to be taken out and this unit will be free again. Also, this unit will be able to target in the damage phase only the units that are adjacent to the hexagon that they are situated, and just like that, it will be targeted only by units that are going to be adjacent to their hexagon. Pay attention that unlike the camouflage thing that we saw in the basic rules, units that are adjacent to a smoked hexagon will not be able to spot for units that are going to be further away. During the maneuver phase, units with this icon right over here will be able to construct something that is called battlefield defenses. All battlefield defenses have 2 purple health, so this will help us when we look at the defense matrix. Also, to build one of these battlefield defenses, the specific unit will have to spend 2 command points. Now we have 3 options for battlefield defenses. The first one is the sandbags. So it's going to provide a heavy cover, and that means of course 2 defense dice, but it will protect them only from specific directions. So now that we already talked about the arcs, we already understand from where it will protect them. Of course, in different maneuver phases, they will be able to add more of the sandbags in order to be protected from other directions. It's important to say that sandbags do not offer a stacked protection. So if we're going to have someone from this hexagon firing at this unit, it doesn't matter that we have here 2 sets of sandbags because it's not going to be stacked. Also, sandbags will be destroyed if we're going to have any vehicle, light or heavy one, going on top of them. So if we're going to have this Wehrmacht light vehicle going from this hexagon to this one, all of these sandbags will be destroyed and put back in the supply. The second battlefield defense is the razor wire that we can see right over here. So it's going to prevent all infantry and light vehicles to enter this hexagon, and it doesn't matter who built it. So of course, the first time that we're going to build inside this hexagon, this unit will be able to come out, but will not be able to go inside again because we're going to have this razor wire. And just like we saw with the sandbags, if we're going to have a heavy vehicle going into this hexagon, this razor wire is going to be destroyed. The last thing that we have is the tank traps. So, as we have right over here, and this is going to prevent from all vehicles to go into this hex. Pay attention, only vehicles and not infantry, and it doesn't matter who constructed it. Just again as a reminder, all of these battlefield defenses will be able to be destroyed if we're going to cause them some damage. It only depends which damage, and we can see everything in the defense matrix.